Hey guys, welcome to lesson 11. This is going to be the most important thing that we have done yet in computer science. So I want to make sure you're caught up. So if you're not caught up, please get caught up before you watch this video because this is where we start to really get into the depths of programming. So come into Eclipse and set up your lesson 11 folder in your lesson 11 class. So what this code is going to do is it's going to sum all integers from 3 to 79. So before we would just say, sum equals 3 plus 4 plus 5. That's a lot of extra work. One of the things that we really focus on with computer science is working smarter, not harder. So what we're going to do is we're going to put together a for loop. So what we want to do is we want to come out and say, set up int j equals 0. So now we have j set up. So now we're going to set up our for loop. And the for loop has 3 parts. The first part is called the initializing expression. So for this, we're saying it's going to count all the integers from 3 to 79. So our initializing, we're going to start j equals 3. And you put a semicolon in here because there's 3 parts. The next part is we're going to tell our loop when to stop. So it stops once it has added 79. So if j is less than or equal to 79, we're going to keep doing stuff. The last, and this is called our control expression. The last part is called the step expression. So we're telling it what to do each time. So if we're summing all the integers, we're going to be increasing j each time. Okay, so we declared initialize things before we get into the loop. Then we set up our loop. The initializing expression tells you where you want to start. The next part, the control expression, tells us how long our loop is going to run for. Fun fact, the control expression is a Boolean, basically. So as long as whatever in the control expression is still true, then the loop will keep executing. And the last part is called the step expression. And the step expression just tells us how the variable changes each time. So like in our example, j increases by 1 each time the loop runs. So the contents of your for loop are going to go in brackets, just like in your if statement. So if you come back into our program, we're going to put some brackets in our for loop. Now, I did want you to watch that video of how loops work on Moodle because it explains very well the dangers of what can happen in a loop situation. You can get stuck in an infinite loop, and it's something that could potentially happen. So like if we said j equals 3, j plus plus, as long as j is positive, it's going to keep running forever and ever and ever, amen. So we want to make sure that it's going to not do that to us. So now you may be wondering kind of how this setup works. So we set j equal to 0 up here. And then we come down the next line, we say j is equal to 3. This is just very common for loops. You could set it inside your initializing statement, but it's very common for it to be initialized outside of the for loop and then used inside of it. So basically what we're saying is that we first come in here, j is 3. This loop executes, then j becomes 4. Loop executes, j becomes 5, loop executes, j becomes 6, until j becomes, once j is greater than 79, the loop will no longer run, and so we'll escape out of the loop. So in programming language, these are what we call iterations. So with each run of the loop, it's called an iteration. Now what we need to do is set up a running total inside our for loop to add 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. So you think you would be able to do like j equals j plus plus, but this doesn't actually work. It's it's a little murky. So what we need to do is we need to set up a brand new variable. So I'm going to come outside my loop because I usually set up my variables outside my loop. And I'm going to call it sum, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. Okay, so sum is now equal to 0. And now we're going to say sum equals sum plus j. So what this is saying is that sum is 0 right here. It adds 3, so now sum is 3. Next loop, sum is 3, it'll add 4. Now the sum is 7, it'll add 5. So it'll keep doing these iterations and increasing sum, while j is just increasing by 1. So now that we have our for loop set up, I'm going to come outside our for loop and do a system.out.println, and I'm going to print sum. So now, if we had put this inside the loop, it would print every single time there's an iteration. So there will be 76 answers. That's unnecessary. We just want to really see the one answer. Also, remember our talk about scope? So if we have sum set up outside the loop, we can use it outside the loop. If we had set up sum inside the loop, we can only have access to it inside our loop. So I'm going to go ahead and run my code. And we get the answer 3,157. So you notice that it took a second to do it because it had to do quite a few calculations for that. Now it's starting to make sense as to why we need more of this code, because look at how small this code is and look at how much work it actually did. We're getting to a point now where it's going to start making more sense to have a code. Like before, when you're just like printing a name, printing a number, adding two things together. I mean, we needed to do it for the practice, but now we're getting to a point where we're going to need to outsmart our own code to make it easier on ourselves and do a lot less work. Now, I will tell you that, I asked you not to print inside there. If there's something wrong with your code, or if you want to test and make sure that you're getting the correct answer at the end, you can go and put a print in there and print it 76 times. You have that ability. You can test and make sure your code's working correct. So like 3 plus 4 is 7, 7 plus 5 is 12, 12 plus 6 is 18, 18 plus 7 is 25. So our code is working how we think it should, which is great. All right, guys, so go ahead and save your work, and you're ready for the next video for lesson 11.